Every empire insists its money is safe. Every government swears its promises will last forever. But history has a way of proving them wrong. From Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon, people have woken up to find their savings worthless, their salaries meaningless, and their futures stolen by systems they thought were unshakable. Collapse isn't unusual. Collapse is normal. So the real question isn't whether financial systems fall apart. It's how you protect yourself when they do. One of the biggest financial traps we fall for is the illusion of permanence. We look at our bank balances, our national currencies, our institutions, and assume they're solid, dependable, permanent. But money isn't bedrock. Money is trust. And trust can disappear overnight. That's why history is both harsh and helpful. Every collapse leaves behind lessons, patterns, and warnings about what actually protects wealth, and what turns into dust. And if you really pay attention, you'll see something interesting. The people who made it through these disasters weren't the ones who believed the system the most. They were the ones who questioned it first. Take the Byzantine Empire, the eastern half of Rome that somehow stuck around for 1,000 years after the West collapsed. At the core of its economy was the gold solidus, a coin so reliable that merchants from Europe to Asia accepted it without hesitation. It was basically the medieval world's global reserve currency. You'd think they would have remembered what happened to Rome's silver denarius, which got debased so much it became more tin than silver. But no. Centuries later, the Byzantines repeated the same mistake. This time in gold, they slowly diluted the solidus, stretching its purity and mixing in cheaper metals. At first nobody noticed, then trust cracked. The rock-solid coin that held Mediterranean trade together became just another political illusion. As its credibility vanished, so did the stability of the Byzantine economy. What held value? Not paper decrees, not government promises. The people who quietly stored real gold or land outside the empire's reach were the ones who kept their wealth. That's lesson number one. Governments can't resist tampering with their money, and when they do, real value escapes into things they can't fake. But not every collapse is caused by rulers tinkering with coins. Sometimes disaster just crashes through the door. In the mid-14th century, Europe was hit by the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in its history. Between 1347 and 1351, up to half the population died. Cities emptied out, villages vanished, trade routes fell apart. But the economic story was more complicated than simple ruin. Because when half the workforce disappears, labor suddenly becomes valuable. Survivors could demand higher pay. Food and land, once scarce, became abundant compared to people. Anyone who had liquidity, silver, goods, or even just the ability to work, gained leverage they'd never had before. Land that once cost a fortune could now be bought for almost nothing. Entire houses stood empty. Fields were abandoned. Survivors found themselves in a buyer's market. If that feels familiar, it should. During the COVID pandemic, we saw a modern version of the same thing. Supply chains broke, governments printed trillions to keep things moving, and inequality exploded. People with liquidity bought assets. Those living paycheck to paycheck got squeezed. In the U.S., home prices soared, and the stock market snapped back almost instantly, while millions struggled to cover rent. The pattern is ancient. Pandemics redistribute wealth. They always have. Survivors of the Black Death climbed the social ladder because scarcity flipped the system. Survivors of COVID who had capital bought homes, stocks, and businesses that others couldn't hold on to. It's not comfortable to admit, but it's true. Crises reward those with reserves and punish those without them. And while pandemics show how fast things can flip, Renaissance Florence shows how quickly too-big-to-fail institutions can crumble. In the 1340s, Florence was Europe's financial powerhouse. Banks like the Bardi and Peruzzi were giants, until they bet too heavily on Edward III of England. When he defaulted on massive loans, the banks collapsed. Depositors lost everything. Trade froze. Florence fell into chaos. Ordinary citizens learned the hard way that big institutions don't equal safety. Reputation doesn't equal security. The lesson? Too big to fail has been a lie for 700 years. Institutions exist to profit, not to protect you. When they fall, they'll take your savings with them. And this repeats again and again, from Florence to Lehman Brothers, to Lebanon's banking collapse in 2019. Survival belongs to those who understand that an institution's promises last only until the day they don't. The American Civil War is remembered for battles and politics, but behind it was a massive financial disaster. Both the Union and Confederacy realized war meant printing money. The North issued greenbacks, backed by government trust, not gold. The more they printed, the less they were worth. Inflation eroded their value. In the South, it was even worse. The Confederacy printed graybacks endlessly. By the war's end, prices had skyrocketed thousands of %. Soldiers' pay became worthless before it could be spent. Families carried bags of bills that barely bought bread. By 1865, Confederate currency wasn't just weak, it was dead. What survived value? Hard assets, land, food, gold, anything real. Those who held them survived. Those who trusted paper lost everything. It's a lesson rarely discussed, but the U.S. has already experienced a currency collapse, and survival came from holding value that couldn't be inflated away. France experienced a similar story during the Revolution. In the 1790s, revolutionaries printed assignats, supposedly backed by confiscated church lands, but they printed too many. Every new issue diluted the last. Prices soared, wages lagged, and the currency collapsed. Farmers refused paper, demanding silver or goods. Bread riots returned. The revolution devoured itself. The winners weren't those holding patriotic notes. They were the ones with food, gold, or land. Jump 2 centuries to Asia, 1997. A speculative attack on the Thai baht triggered a regional meltdown. Countries heavily in U.S. dollars couldn't pay debts when currencies collapsed. Investors fled, unemployment soared, and ordinary people suffered. Those holding dollars or foreign assets survived better. What seemed like a local crisis became a global wealth transfer. The lesson repeated from Byzantium to Argentina. Debt in someone else's money is a trap. When the storm hits, the debtor drowns. Patterns are clear. From revolutionary France to Civil War America to modern Asia, paper money collapses, debt strangles nations and families, and survival favors those who recognize fragility before the system cracks. Collapse isn't just history, it's happening now. Between 2019 and 2021, Lebanese banks froze deposits. Citizens woke to locked accounts, collapsing currency, and wiped out savings. The Lebanese pound lost over 90% of its value. Middle-class families, retirees, professionals, anyone trusting the system were devastated. The truth: money in the bank isn't a treasure chest. It's a loan to the institution, and in a crisis, it may not be returned. Survivors held foreign assets, gold, property or cash outside the banking system. Everyone else was trapped. If this feels distant, it isn't. In 2008, Americans saw homes repossessed while banks causing the crisis were bailed out. In 2020, trillions were printed, inflating assets while wages lagged. In 2023, U.S. regional banks collapsed almost overnight. Too big to fail comforts us, until the doors slam shut. So, how do you survive when everything falls apart? History doesn't give a single answer. In Byzantium, it was gold. After the Black Death, liquidity to buy abandoned land. In Florence, avoiding giant banks. In the Confederacy, hard goods. In France, food and property. In Asia, avoiding foreign debt. In Lebanon, getting out before banks lock the doors. The pattern changes, but the theme is constant. Survival comes from holding things of real value, not blind trust. Collapse is both tragedy and opportunity. For the unprepared, it's ruin. For those with resilience, liquidity, or assets that can't be printed away, it's a chance to acquire wealth at a fraction of the cost. After the Black Death, peasants became landowners. After 2008, cash holders bought homes, while millions lost theirs. Protection isn't just defense, it's positioning yourself to seize what others must give up. Wealth isn't just what you own, it's what you can do. Survivors weren't just people with gold or land. They were bakers who could still bake, craftsmen who could repair tools, farmers who could feed communities, merchants who could move goods. Money loses meaning in crises, but production never does. Those who meet essential needs don't stay poor long. The deeper truth, don't rely blindly on institutions. Combine real assets with real skills and awareness that illusions always crack. Every crisis is a transfer, from many who trusted to the few who prepared, from paper promises to tangible value, from passive savers to active builders. History repeats its patterns. The question isn't whether everything collapses, it always does. The question is whether you'll be left holding promises, or holding something real. Ignore it, and it will crush you.